Hi, good afternoon, and welcome back to Insurance 101. Today's segment, I want to go over different things that actually would not be covered underneath a homeowner's insurance policy. Now, I know us as agents or brokers, we always, well, not all of us, but some of us will yes you to death and say, yes, that's covered because, a lot of people are just out there to sell the policy. I'm here and I've done insurance for 15 years, and yes, I want to be able to write as much business as I can, and I want to be able to sell the best insurance policies as possible and the most. But I am not here to BS you, because I don't want you coming back to me asking or stating to me, hey, you told me X, Y, and Z. No, I told you the truth according to what the policy contract states, okay? So here are certain things that would not be covered, and some of them I find to be quite interesting, and others I think might be self-explanatory. But again, I always want you to check with your insurance agent that you deal with in your state. Each and every single state is different. Each and every single state has different rules and regulations. Insurance is regulated by the state. The only policy that would be regulated by the government is flood, and we even now have flood insurance policies that are being regulated by the state because of the things that happened with Sandy. They done screwed up so bad, but that's not neither here nor there. I'm not going into that in this segment. But let's get started in reference to things that are not covered. So the one thing that I can tell you is definitely not covered would be war and nuclear hazards. So if we have a war and someone drops an atomic bomb, what I say is we're not going to be here to collect on the claim anyway. So just, it is what it is, and be happy, Mary, and make sure that you got your favorite beverage in the refrigerator. For me, that's going to be my douce, okay? So just make sure that you drink up, and make sure you get right with Jamaica, okay? So war and nuclear hazard is not covered. Now, in reference to an earthquake, that is actually not covered underneath a standard homeowner's policy. However, you can buy that coverage back. So what does a buyback mean? It means exactly like what it sounds like. For a price, we will give it back to you. Just like for a price, I might actually cook for you. So in order to buy my love, you might have to buy me some shoes. So in order to buy that earthquake coverage, you would have to spend a couple of dollars in order to get coverage for the earthquake, okay? Now, we all know that flood is not covered underneath a standard homeowner's policy, but you just will not believe how many people I have that says, oh, but my pipe burst in the basement, it flooded. That is not what a flood is. Just like someone actually breaking into your home is not someone burglarizing or your house. So we have two different insurance definitions. Again, a flood constitutes as a runoff of surface waters, which means that the ground's so saturated it can't hold any more water, and now it's me, my neighbor, the neighbor down the street. It has to be at least two or more properties that would be affected in order to be considered a flood. Second thing a flood would be the runoff of it's an overflow, the overflow of a body of water. So meaning, here it is, that dam or whatever it is that broke, that is considered to be a flood. Here it is, the Atlantic Ocean comes into your house, or the bay comes into your house, but it's not just you, it's going to be you, your neighbor, and this person down the street. So this is why we write separate flood insurance policies. So those are not standardly covered underneath a homeowner's policies. However, you can buy it back. The next thing that is not covered underneath a homeowner's policy standard is Ordinance of Law Coverage. So what is Ordinance of Law? Ordinance of Law is, I'm going to throw out a number. Let's say that you actually had purchased a home. Your house was built in 1938, and God forbid there's been no updates or anything on this home, and the home is still standing. But now here it is, you now have a loss on the home. Your town requires that you actually have your electricity come up to code. You have to have certain outlets that come up to code. Whatever it is that brings that home up to code, we in the insurance industry call that ordinance of law. So in the event that a loss happens and there are ordinance of law things out there, things that the town or whomever is now requiring that you bring your home up to code, or let's say, for example, when Sandy happened, now a lot of these homes have no choice but to be what? Elevated, due to the fact that Sandy went in there, and especially where I live in the town of Freeport, they're requiring that you elevate these homes now. So that is actually not covered underneath a standard homeowner's policy. However, again, for a few dollars more, you can actually buy that coverage back. And again, we call that a buyback. So like I said, every single thing has a price. Everyone has a currency. My currency happens to be loyalty, honesty, and some shoes. So it depends. Are you willing to pay for it? Then you can have it, okay? Not me. I'm talking about the Ordinance of Law Coverage. Anyway, now, also I want to let you know that in the event that you have, let's say, tenants in your home, I don't care if your home is, let's say, a legal one-family home, and now here it is, you decided to rent out a part of the house, okay? In the insurance industry, that's something you have to take up with the town. In the insurance industry, we're going to let you know now, the tenant's things are not covered. I'll tell you whose things are covered. It's going to be the named insureds, the spouse, and the resident relatives. If you are not a resident relative, a spouse, or a named insured on that policy, your things are not covered underneath that policy. What you need to do is obtain a renter's policy. A renter's policy in the state of New York for, let's say, I'm going to give you some numbers, and this is actually one of the policies that I can kind of quote without, I can kind of give you a ballpark, because I tell everybody I don't do ballparks, I don't do hypotheticals. Tell me what the situation is and I'll tell you if it's covered or not. So in reference to a renter's policy, you can get a renter's policy, $25,000 worth of contents coverage. Again, contents. Take your house, shake it upside down. Anything that you walk away with, that's going to be contents coverage. So $25,000 worth of contents, $500,000 worth of liability. That would actually run you approximately $400 to $500. Probably no more than $600 for the year. But now that those tenants' things would be covered. So that's something that you're going to make sure. And if I were you renting out any part of my home, always make sure that your tenant carries a renter's insurance policy. In the event, let's say, that they're liable for something, they did something like I did, where I was cute and I was washing the dish, I was washing the litter box, doing a paper, curling my hair, getting ready to go out and dip it and do it and doing it and dipping it, and then I left the water on, and here comes the guy from downstairs talking about, hey lady. So I was liable for that, but yet my renter's insurance policy covered my stupidity. So like I say, insurance does cover stupidity. It was my stupidity, and it happened, and it is what it is, but at least I had insurance for it. But now here it is, let's say that your tenant does that and they don't have insurance. What are you going to do? Sue them for it? Good luck with that, especially if they're renting something, but that's neither here nor there. Now, the last thing I want to get into is vermin. Vermin, and what I mean by vermin is there is an exclusion on the policy for vermin. There's a vermin clause. So I had a client, and this is why I tell everybody, make sure that you read your policy contract. So that big thick thing that they give you at the very beginning of the policy, when it comes with your terms and conditions, it tells you what's covered, what might not be covered. Now don't get me wrong, that stuff sometimes is a little hard to decipher through, because insurance policies are written by who else? Lawyers. So they're not stupid, okay? So they make sure that these policies are written very tight. However, you have a smart insurance agent like myself. What I did was, I had an insured who called me and said to me that a raccoon got up into her attic, and this raccoon and had some babies and everything else, and caused major damage to her structure. So she called me and asked me, was it covered? So I'm in my office and I'm reading through her policy contract, and I had to, your mother always tells you, you're pushing it, you're crossing the line, don't cross the line. Well, according to the policy contract, it was ambiguous language. And when it comes to ambiguity in any insurance contract, they will always favor it. It always goes in favor of the client, excuse me. So I read this thing cover to cover, and I said, this is just such ambiguous language. So here I go. Now, I'm never going to cross the line, but what I did was I took it to the line and I actually put my toe on it. And I actually called them and say, well, according to your contract, it's almost stating that you just say that you have a vermin clause. But if I look it up here, technically, the raccoon falls into the canine family. Well, long story short, the company ended up paying for her raccoon damage. So this is why I always want you to read your policy contract, or if not read your policy contract, if you can't really decipher it before you decide that you're going to put in that claim. What I want you to do is I want you to go to your insurance agent and say, hey, I need to know if this is covered. Do not give your insurance agent hypotheticals, because chances are they don't answer hypothetical questions if they are smart, like I do. I do not answer hypotheticals. Did I tell you? Tell me exactly what happened, and let's see what we can do to resolve this. So now, don't get me wrong, the insurance company turned around the very next year and rewrote their policy contract as to now exclude raccoons, so on and so forth, and it went on to say anything that can burrow or anything through, through a foundation or whatever the case is. So no, my insurer wasn't dropped. I didn't have to rewrite her or anything, but I did get that raccoon covered. So again, you just want to always make sure that you check with your state to see, because again, insurance is regulated by the state. The only policy that would be regulated by the government is going to be your flood insurance policy. And even then, after Sandy, I know that flood insurance can now be written through private markets. So thank you so much again for listening to Insurance 101. Thank you so much for your questions. I did have someone ask me a question about my last video. They wanted to know in reference to self-employment, what benefits they would be entitled to from the state, and I did go ahead and actually answer that question down below in that comment section. So if I want you to leave me a comment, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification button so you'll be notified anytime I upload a new video. Any type of questions or suggestions that you might want to see me do a video on, please let me know. I want to say thank you again. Have a beautiful weekend, and thank you for watching Insurance 101 by Trusted Capital.